What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Welcome back to the Lead Counsel podcast. This is your host, Tom Tona. I'm here with Juliet. Jules, what's going on?
Hi. Welcome back. Can you not laugh at me for that? I don't know what else you want me to say.
I'm leaving this in for everybody that doesn't know. Juliet gets extremely nervous whenever she says hello. I don't know why.
I don't. But Tom laughs at me every single time. But hello. Welcome back.
And we are on part 3 of the series, HR for Law Firms. Today's episode focuses on learning and development of your team. And specifically, it goes to the topic of retention. We have our HR expert, Alesha, here. Alesha, welcome.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
I like how you don't laugh at her hello.
I made the affirmative decision about 10 years ago to really step up my investment in the team, in the people here, right? And I started to survey the landscape to say, where could I add value for my team? So let's talk about the amounts, right? I mean, I've invested, for some people, it's 6 figures, right? In you take a Janira in her learning arc that she's taken over the last 20 years, non-monetary investment in her, in classes, leveling up, training, travel to the training, all of that, it's easily in excess of $100,000. But since you've been here, you've observed it, right? So let's talk about why. Like, what, in your opinion, why do you think we do it? And what do you think the benefit is to the team member?
So overall, learning and development is filling the knowledge gap. And filling the knowledge gap, you're essentially improving your overall business when you're filling the knowledge gap in hard skills and soft skills.
Let's talk about that for a second, because you do touch on that.
Yeah.
You just said investment in acquisition of more skills, right? And then you broke it down into hard skills and soft skills. So let's describe hard skills for a second. Let's use Juliet, because she's here, and you can weigh in, Jules.
Okay.
We talked about Juliet starting as an intern, and now she's my marketing coordinator, which is not an entry-level position, right? She was a marketing assistant for a year. She literally hit it out of the park, and now she's a marketing coordinator. So, Jules, the hard skills that you've been acquiring through groups like PILMA,
The LMA,
Legal Marketing Association, those focus on your actual hard skills, right? As a marketer, different things you can bring to the table as a marketing coordinator.
specifically in the legal field.
In the legal field, right? The soft skills acquisition that you're talking about, becoming a better leader, because both of you are on the leadership team, that's coming through the investment I make with EOS, which I've done for the leadership team and for the organization, right? So talk about soft skills. What do they look like, and why are they so important in the training regimens that we're pursuing right now?
Yeah, soft skills. The soft skills are what's going to keep your business running, because people can have the technical skills.
What are soft skills? Let's not talk in HR jargon.
Yeah.
What are soft skills? Be very specific.
Yeah, like communication skills, emotional intelligence, overall interpersonal skills, being able to communicate in an effective way that isn't offensive. That is essentially what's going to drive a business to do better, because someone can have the technical skills, right? But if they're not able to work in a team with those soft skills, how is the business going to go further?
Right. And so that's another interesting conversation, because that's why I started this investment in team and in the individuals. was I started to look at where I would see the most common ceilings being hit.
Yeah.
And often it was soft skills. Often it was stuff that was not technical related. I have seen some very technically proficient people with very low EQ or very low self-awareness. That's another area that I really focused on. And I think that, so let's talk about specifics of what people can do, what areas they can invest in. So one, I think, go ahead.
One is the business aspect of it, which is EOS. Another is departmental investing, specifically with a law firm, you are investing in attorneys and non-attorneys and enhancing their skills. So for attorneys, we do the marketing here. They meet with Patrick, right? For marketing. They also have their CLEs, which expands on their legal knowledge. And then for the non-attorneys, we also do have lunch and learns that we like to have here at least, once every quarter. So the lunch and learns will enhance their hard skills, but then we also do have some lunch and learns that will improve their soft skills.
Correct. Focus on what you talk about, like communication.
Right.
So let's break that down for a little bit because there are a lot of law firm owners that listen to this. Specifically, one of the trainings that I brought in Patrick Wilson, who's my executive coach, to train whoever the attorneys are in the office on marketing, right? What I realize is a lot of law firms say, we'll give you a percentage of whatever you originate, which is great. But I started to see not a lot of people taking advantage of that. And then, we had 7 attorneys, I think, at the time. And I wanted them to take advantage of it. If you're an attorney and you're listening to this and you work for somebody else, your way to financial freedom is to generate business, right? To originate business. But I also made it voluntary. They don't have to do it. I offered it as a class. I do a 50% investment on that because certain investments require actual buy-in because you don't want people taking it because it's free and then they're not invested in doing the work. They're not invested in the outcomes, right? I don't do training without a designated ROI that I'm seeking, right? So the training is still ongoing. Patrick meets with them once a month on a group call with all the attorneys and then individually. Cost of that is several $1,000s a month for me. I still think that type of investment is why I have attorneys that are here multiple years, that they continue to grow, they continue to make more money, and I'm bringing them value, so there's an intrinsic desire for them to return value, right? Even if they don't want to do it, even if they don't want to do it, just by making the training available, I'm saying, look, if you ever want to, I'm willing to invest in you. Right. So now we've talked about Jules, who's in classes that I'm paying for and getting certifications that I pay for. We're talking about Janira, who in another episode, people should listen to it. I mean, the amount of money I've invested in her, I've gotten back 100-fold over the years.
We only briefly touched on the things she's done in her episode, but we should definitely have her back on to go into all that.
We will have her back on. But yeah, that investment has come back multiples. Jules, the investment in Jules, come back in multiples. The 4 attorneys that are currently in that training are, one of my second-year associates says something like 20 cases he's originated since he started in the last 8 months, right? And then the other associate, she's an excellent attorney, but she's got a different desk, so she's very quiet. She's coming out on TikTok out of the gate, 100 miles an hour. She's fantastic, which is really surprising to me. I didn't think that she would, and yet, meanwhile, every time I open up that app, her TikTok is the first thing I look for, right? So she's going to grow that, and she will get business from that. Okay, so you talked about, even for the non-attorneys, let's talk about the team. I've put people in training to level up their paralegal skills, their intake skills. We bring in an outside intake trainer to make them excellent at their job. I don't charge people for that. That's a benefit for the firm I want. I want to make them better at intakes. I pay for that. Also, several thousands of dollars in training, right? This is all going on right now as we speak. Talk about your own training I've invested in, Alesha.
Yeah, I'm currently taking a HR course that is related to law firms, which is great because I never had that law firm experience. And also just being part of SHRM, having access to any HR related topic that I need, it's all there.
So one of the things before we even get into the deep weeds on this stuff is people that are listening to this and ready to turn it off because they're like, I'm not spending anything on anybody. You got to check your mindset, right? The world is abundant. Could Alesha leave me and the firm if I get her to a certain point? She might, but I'm not going to let that happen because I'm just going to keep increasing my investment in Alesha because Alesha keeps giving me back the ROI I want. And I know you have designs to be a human resources director as you help me scale the firm. Mm-hmm. Could Juliet leave me? Would you leave here now, Jules, knowing the investment I'm making you?
No.
As much as I bust your chops with everything?
Yeah, no.
So one thing that I did come across recently, it was a study done in 2018. LinkedIn Workforce Learning Report found that 93% of employees would stay at a company that invests in their careers by providing growth and learning opportunities.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. That right there is what's creating the retention. 93%.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird because every time I have to do a review with somebody, I go, oh man, I look at the numbers because I'm a numbers person. But I don't know. I never get scared because I always figure when you have a team of pros, it's their job to figure out profitability once I invest in them, right? So no matter what somebody wants, their position then requires what they do to justify that ongoing, right? I've had attorneys, ask me on interviews for numbers that are not market rate. I'm like, do you know what that takes to make that salary and what I'm going to expect? Because it's always a function of that, right? So I have no problem investing in people. I love hearing that statistic. I would urge everybody to talk to your team and see what do they really want. I think people really value this, by the way.
They do. I actually have a quick little story. So I had a friend who started at a job like a year after I had been in the marketing position here. And she was kind of doing some of the similar things. So she was talking to me about what we do here, how I got into this position, because obviously she knew I started as an intern. She was like, how did you even grow into this position? And I explained like a lot of it is the work that Tom allows me, or a lot of it is the work that I do in these kind of learning and development opportunities that you have given me, Tom. So I would explain to her like all the organizations that I've been a part of, the classes I would take that you would help me get into and send to me and recommend for me. And she was at that job for about a year because in that year, I had leveled up here so much. I had gone from...
Were they investing in her?
And that's the thing. They were not. And they said to her at her interview, like, yeah, like, we'll invest in you. We'll help you learn and like grow your skills. And after a couple months, she comes to me and she's like, here you are. You just got a new promotion because your skills have grown. But she's like, but they haven't given me any opportunities. They don't give me any suggestions for learning. She's like, it's kind of like I started the job and they just left me and, I do my day-to-day stuff, but there's no growth and there's no opportunity for me to grow within the company. And she ended up leaving.
A leader doesn't do the work for you, right? I make all these opportunities available. I think that what's important is you do the lifting, right? I know that, Alesha, talk about the stuff that you do in the learning space, skills acquisition-wise, after you leave work, right? When you're texting me on a holiday about something you're learning, like how much time outside of work, because these opportunities are there for you, how much time are you allocating to the learning, whether it's EOS, SHRM, or ALA right now?
I want to say, on a weekend, like on after hours?
Just a weekly basis, an average. It's just a guess,
I'd say like 7 hours.
A week?
Yeah, because like an hour at least after work.
That's amazing. Every day.
Pretty much. It's not like ALA. It's like interpersonal skills too,
no, understood,
right?
Understood.
Especially with HR, I need to and expand on those skills,
100%.
learn a lot. I feel like right now I actually do have a big interest in learning more about emotional intelligence. So that's something I do on my personal time because I enjoy it, but I know it's going to benefit me in my career as well.
Yeah, well, think about interviewing.
Yeah.
You can read people better when you're emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
You can see what is not being said. That's emotional intelligence, sitting across from somebody and going, I'm reading what's going on here and the words aren't jiving, and then asking questions to develop that, right? Jules, how much time are you dedicating to it between EOS, the marketing?
Between that, like just, listening to podcasts, reading different books on it, it's probably about the same.
7 hours a week.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Like, think about that for a second. And anybody that's listening to this, I don't ask them to do it other than to read the EOS traction book. I want to make sure we have that read by the time we do the executive meeting.
It's almost done.
Sweat it.
I'm not worried. I know my team. I'm not worried. But I think that it's incredible. But what I realized is you have to approach HR as a system. And then within that system, there are subsystems. And that's why this series is it's actually helping me crystallize a lot of this as well. Recruiting, it's its own system. When you scale a company, you may have somebody in HR that is their sole job is recruiting, depending on how fast you're scaling, right? Then we did onboarding. You may have somebody who's head of onboarding. People that are listening to this are typically not where we've come from at this point, right? So that was a big learning point for me. I posted about it on LinkedIn. Don't make fun of me, Jules, but I never thought about onboarding. I was like, we're great at hiring. And then I was wondering why I kept having breakage in the 90-day period. So it's a separate thing. It's a completely separate system, right? And then I realized after you started, retention and education, ongoing improvement and education is a separate thing. The amount of time you're spending on education programs.
Development programs.
It's crazy, right? And I can see if you double in size.
Gonna need it.
You build out an internal HR department, right? We already built somebody under you just to help you on recruiting, right? And we talked about it during the recruiting episode. So.
But you've always been very good at developing employees and investing in employees who express their want to grow to you. Like, I think in the past, if somebody has come to you and been like, I really want to learn more about this topic. I mean, I begged you for years. I was like, just make me a marketer, like put me in the position. I've got this. And you were like, all right, well, before that, do this, this, and this.
Right. Show me.
Yeah, show you.
Me.
And I feel like in the past, when people come to you and express their want or need to grow in their position, you give them the tools to do that. And then you're like, okay, here it is. Do it, and then we'll talk about the rest.
So a lot of that is born from the review processes that we've always had where I actually listen to people. It kills me when I hear stories like you just relayed, Jules, where somebody goes on an interview and they're like, we invest in our people. That's like those companies, like there are companies out there that are like, my core values are everything. And here they are. They were copying our ads. And then I'm like, aren't you the guy that literally throws laptops across the office? If you have one team member, you're a solo practitioner with a laptop and you hire your first employee, making it the right hire is crucial. You're probably going to make mistakes because you don't have a system. You have no idea what you're doing. They don't teach this in law school. But let's say you get lucky. I got lucky with Janira, right? I mean, dude, I just got lucky. It wasn't like I knew what I was doing. I got lucky. But that being said, the minute you realize somebody's got that special something, start the investing process because they'll help you build the team if they're good. You wrote down that you wanted to discuss high impact learning organization.
Yes.
What is that?
So that's actually a model created by Josh Bersin. He has a company that is leading in research and advice. It's an advisory, like a consulting company for corporate learning, HR, and talent management. So Josh Bersin created a maturity model, which is...
What model?
It's a maturity model. Maturity for an organization.
Yep.
So it has 4 phases. Number 1 is incidental training, which is your bare minimum that you're offering within a company. So that is onboarding and your compliance training.
Okay.
That's the basics.
Which, by the way, do you know how many law firms don't even do that? I mean, but again, I was guilty of that. They don't teach you this in law school. So I feel bad. Like, nothing I say is meant to sound judgmental or anything of law firms. I've made every mistake out there that you can make, right? They don't teach it to you. So you come in, you're like, I'm the boss. And you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing as a true leader unless you go to masterminds, you observe true leaders. Like I've been very blessed because with the coaching that I get and my tribe of people that are my peers, I've gotten to be in the circles with 7, 8, 9-figure lawyers that are just on a different level. And my coaches are on a different level. I mean, the investment I make in that, it's to be a better leader and build a different company. So just an aside, the lawyers listening to this, you're not going to scale your law firm if you don't invest in yourself as well, because people will stop listening to you, following you, if you're not leading them well, right? And as somebody made all the mistakes, start investing in that as early as you can. Don't take home all the money. Don't buy a fancy Maserati. Don't buy a fancy Rolex. Take that money, invest it in coaching, and then you could buy 10 Ferraris and 10, fancy watches.
The greatest investment you can make is in yourself.
And the second greatest investment that I will ever make is in my team. Period. End of discussion. I could easily take all that money home, but then the team's going to be capped in where they can go. I don't want a revolving door. I want a team of excellent people doing excellent things. So
I actually did want to add one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead. You're still on the incidental training, but I find it remarkable that I was doing this, making good money, and I didn't even have an onboarding compliance program in place. Right now, we got a whole structure to all of this stuff. Right?
This is kind of backtracking, but I do feel like times are changing. It's not something I feel. It's a known fact. Times are changing with
every day.
The workforce. As of 2020. 50% of the workforce is millennials. So our age group, Jules and I's, our 50%, 50% of the age group. So, and a lot of millennials, I know we think differently from the older generation. I know. Well,
every generation does. When I was your age, I did the same thing. Yeah.
So our generation, we do want that ability to grow and expand on our skills. Maybe I don't think the older generation really had that.
I didn't. I could tell you that it's a different world, right? And I had nothing but a solid mentor, but he came up at a time where his heyday might have been the 70s, let's say. And you're going back a long time, right? But they didn't have none of this stuff, none of this training stuff. It was, here's your files, go try a case, right? And don't talk to me about any of this, hooky dooky, soft skills
touchy-feely
bullshit, because it's all bullshit. That was their mindset, right? And I understood it. I didn't care. I'm not a thin-skinned guy, if you haven't noticed. But what's interesting about your observation is I was sitting in a room in a coaching session, and they talked about the importance of millennials in the workspace, and everybody groaned like we were all in our 50s, and now I'm in my mid-50s. I was probably in my late 40s at the time, but they were all like, oh my God, millennials, I'd rather go to the dentist and not have Novocaine, and managing them is so tough. And one of the coaches who has a podcast, his name is Steve Riley, he made a really astute observation. He's like, they're going to comprise 50% of the workforce at some point. So if you want to grow, you better figure out how to lead them.
Get with it.
Get with it, man. Get with it. And I feel like once I opened my mindset up, it did a couple of things. It made me a better leader. It also keeps me young, right? Because I get a different energy and input from you and Jules, and I kind of like that, right? You're like, hey, old man, this is not the way we do things anymore. The way we do things are, you want us to be excellent at 27? Then train us. And you're right? I can't expect you to be executive mindsets if I don't teach you what executives do. And I'm not going to do that. So I bring in an outsider through EOS that teaches you what executives do, right? And I tell you, listen, I'm investing $35,000 in a year in this. What I'm going to pay for it, but you're going to do the work. And if you don't do the work, you're going to pay the consequences, because I want excellent leadership, right? So if you want to be on the leadership team, great. I value that input. And I knew bringing both of you on specifically that you weren't ready to lead necessarily without learning how. So keep going through the high impact learning organization.
Yeah, incidental training is the basics of what every company firm should do. The next is training and development excellence. So this is where you're getting a little more in depth with what you're offering to the team. So this is like a formal learning program. So leadership training, something that gives them access to on-demand training for all employees, whether that be videos or seminars. It doesn't have to be so consistent, but it's still something that is offered. And I do feel
and it's available at any time for them, right? So go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, so this is more like, I do feel like this is kind of where we are now. We're a little more than this, but it doesn't have to be a consistent training where it could be like a quarterly thing, or it's kind of lost where I would.
So let's break it down though, because I think we definitely have been doing this stuff. Yeah. I'm going to be curious as to how high we've gone so far. So I'm going to be curious to see whether you go with this. But the formal learning programs include a ton of leadership development training, right? Access to on-demand learning. So we offer that for all the attorneys and for the non-attorneys, right? Different topics, and we have different software platforms that we use that offer on-demand learning of all of our systems, right? We've created a learning system in our TonaLaw portal for our team, the TonaLaw team portal, TTP, that gives all team members access to their departmental specialization and their seat specialization on how to optimize doing their job, hard skills, right? What are the hard skills you need to know to be a litigation paralegal or a, legal assistant? So that's an excellent, listen, just getting to that stage, you're probably in the top 15% of law firms that are under 50 employees, just getting to that stage. Yeah. Which is crazy. Think about the competitive advantage you're already doing by offering this type of stuff. So go to what's the next stage? You said there are 4 stages to a high-impact learning organization. Talk about the next stage.
Yeah, the third stage is talent performance improvement. So this is where the learning pretty much equates career growth. So now I think about it, I feel like this is where we truly are as a firm. So in this phase, there's more transparency on what skills are needed in order to achieve that career growth.
And we often talk about that at the review stage, right? So, and actually, I think with you, we probably talked about it like in your first week where we were like, okay, you're coming in as
the first day.
Yeah, we might have. Where we said, okay, you're coming in as an HR generalist. What are your career goals? And you were like, I want to be an HR director. I was like, okay, well, what are the steps in between? What are the different HR roles that are in between? And do the homework. Yeah. Tell me the skills that you have to acquire. Let's take this in baby steps. Let's put in the time. But that also is like that could be a 5-year plan. What's the next stage of development in terms of becoming an intentional learning organization? That what's the name? High impact learning organization.
Yeah. So the highest in the maturity model is capability development. So this is where you're really intentional with what you're offering in terms of learning. Honestly, this is like a really high financial investment. With this, it's more like you're getting to the literal details of how a person works, their like ins and outs of the role, like entirely. That's what you're learning about. Yeah, I think with investing in education, that's at the third level. With the capability development phase of it, you're pretty much at the highest level.
So my question for that last level, is that where, for instance, Tom would bring in a personal business coach for somebody that they meet like
for
weekly?
For each individual.
Okay, gotcha. All right, look, that makes sense because that's a very significant investment. That's a development stage of growth that you do when you hit that stride as a company. So I'm excited about that. That's interesting. I didn't know there was that level there, so I'm excited. That's actually really interesting because if we hit a certain point, of course it makes sense. If we double in size, I double the investment. Of course it makes sense.
Alesha and I are looking at you like, when's our coaches coming?
Okay. What do we look for when we're deciding what type of investment we're going to make? How much? In who? Yeah. What do we look for in terms of making the decision to deploy financial resources on training and education.
Well, essentially, we want to fill the gap of what they don't know, right?
But we also, I think, we look to align
the business goals
and their personal and professional goals, right? I think I'm always asking, tell me what you want to achieve, because it's different for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you want to achieve, and let's see how we make it work in the context of everybody winning. The business winning, you winning, and then we're all winning. So we look at what our company's priorities are, right? And then we say, how do we build what the business needs for the clients and still align that with what somebody wants personally and professionally, because everybody's got different wants. One of the things I would tell anybody that's listening to this, because it's a lot of law firm owners specifically, is there's a couple of things. One, you can't hire somebody in their 20s and expect them to know everything. I'd even say they're not going to know anything about a law firm or what you want. And so you got to understand who you're hiring, right? And then tailor what you want, what you're willing to do. Don't hire an intern, paying them an intern's wage and expect them to be an executive. Mm-hmm. Now, if they have the raw skill set, they show the right character, and they are like everything you want, core value-wise and culture alignment, that's a person you want to invest in. That's how I determine who I invest in, is are they aligned with our core values and our culture, right? Plain and simple. If they are, I know if I invest 6 figures into somebody, I'm getting back multiples. Maybe it may not be for a couple of years. More often than not, it's almost immediate. Mm-hmm. It's almost immediate. Let's talk about the one area that we haven't talked about yet in terms of development. And it's one of my favorite areas to talk about in terms of development and skills acquisition and soft skills acquisition. Go ahead. You know what I'm going to say?
Terry.
So for anybody that's listening to this, for probably a decade, we have deployed an industrial psychologist named Terry. So much so that at one point we were like, why don't you just take an office in our office and you become an internal industrial psych? But she lives in Florida now and she does a lot of the stuff she does by FaceTime. I can't even tell you how long we've been working with her. I can't even tell you how many. I've probably invested just 6 figures in her working with our team. Mm-hmm. So, Alesha, you're in HR. You've been in HR now for this is, I think, your 6th year you're going into?
Yeah, I would say.
You ever work someplace where they had an industrial psych working with the team?
No.
Okay.
They probably had the opposite.
Meaning what?
I'm not going to. I'm just going to let you think about it.
Oh, okay. So what I realized is that a lot of what I was seeing, and it wasn't just 20-somethings, it was 30s, it was 40s, it was 50s, it was 70s. It wasn't just a millennial thing, is that people would get to a certain level and cap out, and sometimes tap out, and sometimes be asked out of the office, right? Because people were only going as far as the ceiling they set on themselves personal development-wise. And this is one of those investments that I make once I determine, hey, what's going on here that I can't figure out. That means it's not business related. That means it's personal, and it's typically
out of your pay range.
I always say it's out of my pay grade, right? It is above my pay grade. So let's unpack all of this for a second. I have seen where people will rise to the highest level that their internal beliefs will allow them to rise. And a lot of those are limiting beliefs or, a lack of self-awareness, whatever it is, that I know I have zero ability to influence. Period. End of discussion. So if somebody's valuable and I've invested tens of thousands of dollars in somebody, and there's somebody right now I'm thinking of, I've invested $50,000 in training her in hard skills, and she's an assassin. She can go right now to another law firm, they'll hire her, right? But I started to notice the limiting beliefs that were held were going to hold her back. And I was like, hey, listen, we offer this resource to people. It's up to you. You don't have to go. I don't care. It's not for me. The investment I make is a 50% contribution of whatever the cost is of working with Terry, the industrial psych. I'm going to call her industrial psych because that's a whole field onto itself. This is not something I look for, I require. I only offer this as a resource, right? Somebody's going through a tough time. I can't fix that, but I can offer the resource.
So the best way to implement a learning and development model is first to identify the training needs. Where are there gaps in the knowledge of your professionals at the firm? The next is...
And paraprofessionals, not just the lawyers.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Right. The next thing is creating the actual training program. Who do you want to facilitate the training? What topics are going to be covered? There's a list of things for this aspect.
Yeah, but I think what's important is you don't have to do it yourself either.
Yeah.
You can hire people, external consultants that do all of this stuff. And I do both, right? There are things that I love to do, and we facilitate those trainings ourselves. And then there's stuff that I hate to do or I'm not good at that I pay a couple $1,000s and I get the training from somebody who's better at it than me.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that 3-step program for anybody that's listening is really important. Keep investing in your people, and your organization is going to go places you had no idea you could take it. And I'm going to end it at that. Thank you so much again, Alesha and Jules. You guys have been rock stars in helping me put this series together. And if anybody has any questions, we'll put information on how to connect with Alesha. You can ask her HR questions. You can't try to poach her because you won't be able to. But that's it. Let's call it a day.
Thank you, Alesha.
Thank you.
You're the best. Thank you, guys.